What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Experience Health Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about thriving through perimenopause and menopause. Um, the transition can often feel overwhelming, which is why I wanted to bring Allison on to chat about it because the transition doesn't have to be as difficult as many people experience it to be. And with the right preparation and strategies, you can make this journey not only smoother, but also an opportunity to truly thrive. So, to help us unpack this, I'm joined by Alison Bladh. Is that how you say your last name?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
that's perfect.
amazing. I've practiced it a couple times. I practiced like two different types. So anyway, she is a registered nutritional therapist and okay, well, I can't get this word. Esthetician?
Esthetician, yes, yes.
Esthetician. With decades of experience in health and wellness industry, she specializes in helping women in midlife, menopause, and beyond to reclaim their health and zest for life. Allison brings a unique blend of expertise and passion to her work, empowering women to take charge of their well-being. As an author, speaker, health writer, she shares compelling real-life stories and actionable evidence-based strategies that transforms lives through nutrition, lifestyle changes, and mindset shifts. So today we're going to be exploring the importance of starting early, starting support early, and dive into lesser known tips for overcoming common menopause struggles like weight gain, fatigue, heat flashes, etc., and discuss how to thrive through the life stages. So let's get started. So Allison, is there anything else that you want to say about yourself to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, no, you gave me such a lovely introduction there. So I think you've said virtually everything. I mean, as you said, I'm a nutritional therapist and a esthetician. Really is a posh word for beauty therapist. So I started my career with skin health. I had very bad acne as a teenager, and this really triggered my interest into hormones, because when you come into perimenopause, you can actually develop acne and have many different issues appearing on your skin. So that's really was where my love of hormones started, and that led me
Mhm.
into nutrition, working from the whole body aspect, not just the skin. But yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
you said everything else.
Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely super interesting. People always have some sort of like a start story, some issue that they started with that got them into the health and wellness space. So that's very, very interesting. So diving right in, I kind of want to just help give my audience a little bit of a brief education on like what happens during perimenopause and menopause for them to understand this a little bit more. So can you briefly explain first what perimenopause and menopause is, and then explain the hormonal shifts that happen during perimenopause? And then we're going to dive into how they can set the stage for menopause.
Sure. Yeah, it's actually very good to explain, because there's so many women that don't fully understand really what menopause is, because we don't talk about it, do we?
Yeah.
It's this shrouded in this negativity. And I, work with women daily, and there's so many that I meet that don't even know really what perimenopause means. So what
Yeah.
you've got is, to break it down, you've got what we call the menopause transition. Now, the menopause transition is a transition from when you go from perimenopause into menopause to postmenopause. And this whole transition can actually take many years. I mean, it's very individual.
Mm.
But on average, perimenopause is the time around the age of 45 where you start noticing these little symptoms kind of creeping in, like hot flushes or flashes, maybe getting a bit more weight around the tummy area, irritability, lack of focus, brain fog, all of these things. But they kind of just creep in. And during perimenopause, your hormones actually can be quite erratic. It's like this big roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And estrogen can be quite dominant. I see that a lot in clients, that the estrogen levels are quite high in perimenopause, which obviously leads to another array of different symptoms. So
Yeah.
things become unsettled, unbalanced, and you start experiencing, well, the majority of women start experiencing some sort of symptoms. And this can go on for many years. Unfortunately, it can be a very lengthy process. And then when you haven't had a period, so when you haven't had a menstrual cycle for a year consecutively, you are actually then in what we call menopause. So really, menopause, it just means that day when you haven't had a period for a year, you can say, oh, okay, I'm not in perimenopause anymore. I'm now in menopause. And then all the time after that, you're actually in what we call postmenopause. And that's the rest of a woman's life. And your ovaries no longer produce estrogen and progesterone. So your ovarian function has finished. You're no
Mhm.
longer fertile. With that comes, because you don't longer no longer produce, well, you do produce a very, very small amount of these hormones, comes with it some health risks, like bone health, heart health, etc., because we need our hormones.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do some people experience more severe symptoms through perimenopause than other women, would you say?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we don't really know, but when you look at research, I think there's a few things coming into play here. One of it is genetics.
Mm.
I see that when they say, "Oh, my mother just flew through menopause, didn't have any problems." You can see it's not always the case, but maybe the daughters will have that experience. But what I think one big factor that comes into play is how we look after ourselves, and the condition that your health is in when you come into perimenopause. If you're leading a very stressful life, if you're maybe carrying a little bit of extra weight, or you're not eating as healthily as you should, that can absolutely make your experience of perimenopause worse.
Okay. So most of it seems to be like genetics based on like what happened to your parents, but there definitely is lifestyle and like nutritional changes that you can make that perimenopause transition a lot smoother, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's obviously underlying, if you have health conditions
Mm.
that can maybe trigger off or make the experience worse, like endometriosis, PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. Some of those things can, make the menopause transition slightly more tricky for people.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
there's a lot that you can do to look after yourself. So when you come to this stage of your life, you hopefully, can have a better experience of perimenopause.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be diving into practical applications a little bit later on, but I kind of want to go back into like talking about the hormone side of things. So you mentioned once you get into menopause, that's when ovarian function pretty much shuts down, and so you're not creating estrogen or progesterone from your ovaries. Where else are they created? And can you, or is there a way that you can increase production or optimize, I guess, production of like estrogen and progesterone from those other areas? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, the human body is a fantastic thing, isn't it? I mean, it is amazing. And all your body ever wants to do is create homeostasis, just wants
Yeah.
balance. And, we throw so many things at it, don't we, in daily life that knocks it off all the time.
Yeah.
Totally. Uh, but when we talk about hormones, and as you rightly said, your ovarian function finishes. Your body understands that it needs estrogen and progesterone, and there's an array of other hormones as well. But these two hormones are produced in very small amounts by your adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. It's not, it doesn't produce that much of it, but it
Yeah.
produces a small amount of these hormones. But if you're suffering from stress, which it feels like majority of us are chronically stressed these days,
Yeah.
that chronic daily stress, you produce a hormone called cortisol. This is
Mhm.
a stress hormone, which is also produced from your adrenal glands. And your body will always prioritize stress hormones, so cortisol production over estrogen and progesterone. So that chronic stress in itself is stopping your body from producing estrogen and progesterone because it will constantly be producing the stress hormone. So one thing that that you can do that will have an effect on that is stress management. Really looking at your daily life and being honest with yourself. What is causing me stress every day and doing something about it?
Yeah, that's amazing. Stress management is definitely a really common thing that I work with my clients, helping them improve adrenal health, regulate their nervous system, whatever you want to call it. But I found that that's like one really big piece that a lot of like practitioners and doctors tend to miss with people when they're just like throwing supplements at them. And it's like they're like living in fight or flight. Their body's not even thinking of like prioritizing healing right now. It's just trying to survive. And if your body is just trying to survive, pumping out so much cortisol, or maybe you've even gotten to the stage where you're like burnt out to where cortisol production has even slowed after too much stress because it just can't keep going on that way. Um, that's just not where healing happens. And so that's definitely a really big thing that I work with my clients in like healing their gut, optimizing their hormones. And a big thing that I do in my practice personally is helping people overcome weight loss resistance. And I have definitely also
Mhm.
found that adrenal health is important in that. So that's super interesting. Would you say that that's like I guess everyone is different, but, like, would you say that's one of the, like, most common things that you focus on for people who are or I guess, like, the first thing that you focus on for people who are menopausal or perimenopausal and they're showing symptoms?
Yeah, the stress management, as you say, is a huge piece
Yeah.
for me because as I totally agree with you when it comes to weight management. It's very difficult to lose weight if you're constantly stressed because cortisol is a fat storing hormone. So that the two key I mean, I work very individually with clients, but I can. There's two things that I tend to really focus on initially, and one of them is
Mm,
stress management, and the other
mhm.
one is blood sugar
Yeah.
balance. Really trying to get the insulin levels down because that is an area for women as we age that we can become insulin resistant.
Yeah.
Our blood sugar levels can become unbalanced. So really working with that has such a huge effect on the body. If you've got that balanced blood sugar rather than, up and down all the time.
Mm. Um, how would you say blood sugar is a really big thing that I do in my practice to support insulin resistance and again overcome weight loss resistance? Can you hear the dogs barking?
No, I can't hear them.
Okay, because there's dogs barking in my background, so I was curious if you could hear them or
No,
not.
I can't hear them.
Okay, great. Anyway, with that being said, how would you say blood sugar dysregulation affects perimenopause and menopause symptoms specifically? For better or for worse, both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. There is actually a lot of research on blood sugar balance and menopausal symptoms, in particular things like hot flushes. Or hot flashes. They're called flushes or flashes, depending where
Mm,
you live in the in the world. Um, a high sugar diet, if you're eating a lot of refined, processed foods with lots of sugar, uh, very easily absorbed, that shoots your blood sugar up. And having the levels of blood sugar when they're higher really can trigger off a lot of menopausal symptoms like hot flashes,
mm,
like focus, lack of concentration, irritability, and it can cause inflammation in the
yeah.
body having higher levels of blood sugar. So it really has like this knock-on effect. You could already be feeling pretty terrible going through menopause, and then add the high blood sugar onto that, and it just doesn't help at all. It just makes the symptoms worse, and it can trigger them off a lot more.
Mm, okay. Would you say like the biggest like influence that blood sugar dysregulation has on those symptoms like hot flashes is through it increasing inflammation, like because it increases inflammation you therefore develop these other symptoms? Is that typically how you notice that they develop, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, inflammation, I think is a big piece there,
Yeah.
definitely, because you're causing this inflammation in the body, which is upsetting everything, isn't it? Going back to homeostasis there,
Yeah.
I think inflammation is a big piece there, absolutely, when it comes to higher blood sugar. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So, stress management, you guys already got two really important things to work on, stress management and blood sugar regulation. Really, really important. Um, I'd kind of like to dive into helping people understand signs and symptoms uh, that they can notice if they're having issues or if they're going through perimenopause, etc. So, what would you say are the early signs that women should look for to know it's time to start supporting their bodies in this transition?
Yeah, I mean, perimenopause, as I said, starts around the age of 45. But
Mm,
I see a lot of women as you come into your 40s, 42, 43, you can start seeing, a little bit of change in hormones and these little symptoms creeping in. Symptoms like irritability, but it's difficult because I think a lot of women put it down to life, don't they, in general, like the
mm,
daily life and stress and everything. You don't necessarily think that you're in perimenopause. And I know women that I work with, when I say to them, have you thought that you could be in perimenopause? And they're like, no, no, absolutely not. They don't necessarily always think that.
yeah.
But I would say the classic ones to think that you would start experiencing, like the feeling really all of a sudden very hot, the hot flash, uh, irritability, kind of like mood, bit more less tolerant of things, and then forgetting, the classic, you go into a room and you don't know why you walked in there, or you can't find the car keys, or you can't remember somebody's name. Estrogen and progesterone has a huge effect on our cognitive health. So all those
Mm,
little things just creep in, but there's over 40 menopausal symptoms. I mean, the list just goes on. So it is a very individual experience, but I think that probably
yeah.
the most common symptom is the hot flash, and
Yeah.
anxiety as well. That has become a very big menopausal symptom that women, that never suffered from anything like that
Mm,
before, suddenly suffer from anxiety, which is terrible.
yeah. That's interesting. In your experience, what hormonal shifts in perimenopause typically happen that causes those symptoms? Like, is it the
Yeah, I
high
mean,
estrogen, or like what like specifically is causing these symptoms?
yeah, I think because in perimenopause things are just go a bit crazy.
Crazy? Yeah.
And it can be, you see, like 1 month your estrogen could be really dominant, and the next
Mm,
month it isn't, and your progesterone tends to be slightly lower, and progesterone is very calming. It
mm,
is like
yeah.
that very, I always like it to like the calming best friend that gives you a cuddle when you're feeling really stressed. Whereas estrogen is a bit of the diva. Higher
Yeah.
estrogen makes you like all it's like the diva, which doesn't have the best friend there to give you a cup of tea and give you a cuddle and say everything's going to be okay. So that dominant estrogen can absolutely feed into anxiety. So it's really to do with the fluctuations happening.
Mm. Okay, that's super interesting. So, would you say that like if people can like understand like what hormones are typically happening, because obviously like if you have irritability, they're not going to be irritable like all the time. Like
Mm.
with the hormonal fluctuations, usually the irritability comes and goes and is like sporadic, right? Would you agree with that too?
Yes, yeah, in
Yeah.
perimenopause, yeah,
In
absolutely, yeah, it
perimenopause,
comes in
yeah.
waves, yeah, yeah.
So, would you say that like most of the time the like irritability, anxiety type symptoms is when your estrogen is a little bit higher and your progesterone is a little bit lower, and then it kind of just goes a little bit, it just goes up and down and your symptoms change. Since there's like 40 different symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so individual, like,
Yeah.
because, one woman might have high estrogen in perimenopause and low, and another one might have something completely different. I think that the reason we become, it's not everybody that does. Some women just sail through, never experience any symptoms, but is the imbalances going on there and the changes that are happening in the body. causes these imbalances in cognitive health and
Mm,
irritability. And,
I
you kind of
see. Okay.
lose that buffer that you
Mm.
would have had before when something that didn't irritate you at all, suddenly just makes you go crazy, like somebody maybe eating loudly or drinking something and drinking loudly. I mean, it really, really can irritate you, whereas before it wouldn't.
Yeah. It's funny what the mind like notices just by like
Mhm.
changes in your hormones. It's actually pretty crazy. But
Yeah.
super, super interesting. So now that my audience has more of an understanding of what menopause is, hormonal changes that are happening, symptoms that they can look for, can you share some specific ways women can support their hormonal health in perimenopause to prevent severe imbalances later and maybe even like before perimenopause as well? For
Mhm.
people who aren't in it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look at nutrition first, that nutrition is a big piece here,
Mm.
in overall health and hormonal health. And you really have to go back to basics. And I do totally appreciate that this isn't easy because of the food environment that we live in. There's just processed food everywhere. And when I
Mhm.
say processed food, I mean like packaged food.
Yeah.
It's not like a whole food. So what you want to think about doing is, as much as you can, eating food, like proper food. When you
Mhm.
look at it, it doesn't come in a packet. It's not got 10, 20 different ingredients. It's a piece of broccoli or a piece of chicken if you eat meat.
And it's not a
Because
powdered meal replacement. Just
no, exactly.
just throwing
Food.
that out there. Eat some food, okay?
Food. It look you
Yeah.
you look at it and you know what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, and that is the way the human body was made to, we're meant to eat like that.
Yeah.
And because of this huge amount of these, what I call them like toxic food, we
Mm.
see the impact that it's having worldwide on our health.
Yeah.
Just going back and buying whole foods, avoiding packaged foods with, if you can't read the ingredient or you don't know what it is, then you shouldn't really be eating it. All these chemicals and E numbers and colorants and emulsifiers,
Yeah.
and that's not what we were meant to eat. And
No.
when you as a woman, when you come into perimenopause, if you're eating these sort of foods, you're not really looking after yourself. As we've said, you most likely will have worse symptoms. So cutting back or cutting out completely, which you think that's probably very difficult. But cooking from home, having vegetables, having healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, protein. That's something that women in general don't eat enough of. Roughly a palm size of protein with every meal. Things like fish, chicken, soya, and then thinking about what your plate looks like, filling half your plate up with vegetables. That's a brilliant way to start.
Yeah.
Because if you're estrogen dominant, which you can be in perimenopause, and this really is also for women that aren't in perimenopause, we need
It's a
to,
very common thing that we're seeing nowadays in women. A lot of
yeah.
estrogen dominance for sure.
Yeah, and eat it. One way that we need to look after that is by eating fiber.
Fiber.
Cruciferous vegetables in particular are
Mm.
brilliant because what they do is they help us eliminate estrogen, because we need to detoxify estrogen, and eliminating it is the best. Well, that's the way we detoxify it. And cruciferous vegetables like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts enable your body to eliminate it so much better. So eating as much fiber as you can is brilliant for women's hormone detoxification.
Mm.
But it's also very interesting what you were saying about estrogen dominance, because what women need to think about as well is like endocrine disruptors that
Mm. Yeah.
unfortunately are in our environment. Cleaning products, what we put on our skin, herbicides, pesticides, plastics, all of
Yeah.
these things affect our hormones.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up because there has been like a lot of research coming out about endocrine disruptors and how they're affecting the bodies, and even in like men,
Mm.
like men are showing lower levels of testosterone. Like I think like 21-year-old men have the same testosterone levels on average as like 50-year-old men like 50 years ago or something like that. I could be off with my numbers. You guys can totally fact check me, but I think I'm about in the right range, but it's decreasing incredibly. And I think what obviously like food itself has a really big play on that, but also like the endocrine disruptors in the body. Because can you explain to my audience a little bit about how endocrine, I don't know why I can't say that word right now, endocrine disruptors negatively affect the body and increase estrogen?
Yeah. I mean, endocrine your endocrine system is your system that produces hormones. That's a very basic description of it, but it produces the hormones. It's different glands in your body. And depending on what the product is, I think that, herbicides, glycinate was a very big one that
Mm.
affected estrogen levels. And it basically comes into the body, whether you breathe it in or, depending if it, glycinate obviously isn't in products. This was specifically in pesticides and herbicides, and it really affects the estrogen levels in the body. Some in endocrine disruptors also, like, they mimic estrogen in the body, so but they're not a good form of estrogen, so they can
Yeah.
really, add to your estrogen levels. They're xenoestrogens.
Xenoestrogens. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a form of estrogen, but it's bad. It's not, absolutely not what
Yeah.
you want in your body.
It's
So
not the
it can,
estrogen that you need. It's
no, absolutely
it's
not. You
fake.
do not want it there. So it just
Yeah.
it goes into your body and causes huge disruption with your hormonal balance. And they are actually, I would even say, quite dangerous.
Yeah. What would be like the five biggest um sources of endocrine disruptors or xenoestrogens that both men and women should look out for and try to stay away from as much as they possibly can?
Mm. Yeah, I would say five. I mean, things like products that you use, whether it's on your skin, on your hair, all of the things that you use on your body. Just be very mindful that you buy good quality, um, as much as you can, because some of those can contain ingredients that aren't necessarily beneficial for the endocrine system. Things like even cleaning products that you use in your house. I'm trying to think of things that you use on a daily basis that really have an effect, but you know, cleaning products that you cleaned your house with
Yeah.
can contain endocrine disruptors. But there is actually I live in Europe, but there are a lot of very good products that you can buy now that are made from more natural ingredients, so that they are available. So cleaning products, and then I would look at things like how you store your food. Plastics. I mean, that's a huge thing, isn't it? There's so much plastic everywhere, and I can
Drinking out of
totally
like drinking out of like plastic water bottles too in the realm of
yeah,
plastics.
yeah. And if I see like plastic water bottles, especially if they're in the sun, it
It's
just
like,
makes
no,
me shudder.
no. It's like you could just like
Oh,
taste the plastic in the
yeah.
water.
Because it's seepage. Basically, the
Yeah.
BPA, which is the chemical, one of the chemicals in plastic, seeps into the water, so you consume it. So try to, with a very good small step that you can do is remove. I don't have plastics in my kitchen. Remove it. When you store foods in the fridge, store them either in glass or steel, or non-plastic, non-dangerous materials,
Yeah.
because it seeps into the product. And if you warm things up in the microwave in plastic, it just adds to that. It makes it
I
even worse,
know.
because yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even obviously everyone grew up with plastic Tupperware, but I only use glass now. I'm like, okay, the food is like seeping into this plastic Tupperware. How would the plastic not seep into the food? I'm just like, how would that not happen? That's definitely a really, really big thing that people can look for. And also like cooking utensils as well is a big thing because you're literally like heating it up. It like depending on the plastic that you're using, but I had this one like super cheap plastic spatula thing. And like when I would like turn my food over, it would literally kind of like it was super cheap. It would like melt the tip a little bit. And I was like, I don't want to be eating plastic right now. So I had to get different ones. So I was like, that's not worth saving a few bucks.
No,
But
no, it's
yeah.
buying quality, isn't it? And like you
Yeah.
say, things like what the pans that you cook in as well.
Yeah.
You know, good
I personally
fashion
use
iron
cast
pan is
iron.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love cast iron lino. There's good quality ceramics
Mhm.
too, but those are usually more expensive. So I typically go for the cast irons.
Yeah, cast iron is
Um,
great, and it actually an added benefit to that is that if you need, you know, if you're slightly low in iron,
yeah.
the iron from the cast iron actually seeps into the food, so it you know it can be very beneficial for women that have lower iron levels.
Yeah, definitely. And then one other one that I want to touch on that a lot of women don't think about, endocrine disruptor would definitely be like perfumes and
Yeah.
like scented stuff. I think that's another one that we need to touch on because there's so many women who just like down themselves with so much perfume. They have the scented things in their car, scented stuff in their house. They like spray the, whatever scented stuff to make their room smell good. Um, and that is a very big endocrine disruptor that people need to pay attention to as well. So, personal
Yeah.
products. What was the other one? Oh yeah, cleaning
Plastics.
products, plastics, um, perfumes
Uh,
and fragrances. What would be
yeah.
a fifth one
Fifth
that you
one,
talk
what
about?
you know, also a big thing is like furniture and things that you know when you buy like new furniture or a new settee or okay, it's not something you maybe do all the time,
Yeah.
but when you peel that plastic off, any sort of new products that you buy, they can be terrible. Those like the smell that comes from those because they've basically been sprayed in chemicals. So
Mm,
anyone that's got any sort of new furniture or anything like that, if you can try to unpackage it outside.
mm. That wouldn't work for me in Alaska. But if let's say someone can't unpackage it outside, what would you say the alternative would be?
Try to if you've got like a room that you can maybe that you don't use as much,
Yeah.
that you could maybe unpackage it in there and close the door because it's better.
Mm.
You need to let it like airate for a bit.
And then maybe like open the
Um,
window for a certain
yeah,
flow.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Open the window, but it's also things like I've been thinking about furniture. You know, products that you spray on clothes to make them waterproof and shoes. You know, all of
Oh
those
yeah.
things that people use on their clothing. I mean, all of those things can have an effect on our endocrine system. So it's really
Mm.
making sure that you do it outside when you're spraying
Yeah.
these things, so you don't bring it into the house.
Yeah. Protect yourself from those toxic fumes.
Mm.
That's a good one. I haven't thought of that one before, so that's a good one to bring up too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Uh,
also on the garden, what do you use on your to kill weeds in the garden? I mean, I think I'm not actually sure. I think it's in Europe they're quite strict about they got rid of a lot of the real chemicals. I'm not sure if it's the same where you are, but
Not yet.
they're
We're
terrible. I mean,
we're
they're
trying to
really
work on that. But so far glyphosate is in a lot of our food. They spray pesticides on pretty much everything. So we're trying to get rid of that though. So it's a
Mm.
current work in progress, but hopefully that will happen soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that Europe has better regulations when it comes to those things than America, which is probably why, I don't know, from what I've noticed, Europeans seem to be on average healthier than Americans by
Mm.
quite a bit. So I feel like that's probably a big reason why, because you guys have had those regulations for quite a few years
Mm.
now, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. There
Yeah.
are a lot of products that are banned here that are available in the US
Yeah.
ingredients. And I always think it's interesting when I have friends or talk to people from the US that when they come to visit Europe, so people maybe that have like a gluten intolerance or a lactose intolerant or have food allergies, when they come to Europe and eat the same food, they don't have a problem with it. They can
Yeah.
eat it and they don't have any allergic reaction.
Yeah, I've heard that so much too, and I will buy, Italian pasta from, like, a marketplace here in Alaska because my gut literally I'm gluten intolerant, but because of the way that they process the wheat, it pretty much takes out the gluten in whatever way they process it, so I can
Mm.
literally tolerate that wheat pasta better than gluten-free pasta just because it's, like,
Mm.
actually high quality, processed well. Because all because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's healthy for you. I've
No.
definitely come to learn that a really big lesson on that. So, yeah, it's definitely super interesting. I know
Mm.
that there's, like, bigger brands or, like, bigger companies in Italy that doesn't process it the same way anymore, but if you try to look for, like, the smaller businesses who stay processing it the proper way, I think they, like, take longer to process it so the gluten I don't know how exactly it works. I saw a video
Mm.
on it, but it is super interesting, and I have seen that very often with people. So, yeah, I want to go
Yeah.
to Italy or not Italy, but
Yeah.
I want to go to Europe really, really bad and eat all the foods.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, cool. Okay, I want to go back to nutrition here for a second because nutrition is something that seems really complicated for people. So like first thing, if you're going to focus on anything, just eat whole foods, okay? We've got that down. Make sure that you know what it is. It's whole foods and try your best to cook from home. But when it comes to perimenopause or even people in menopause stages, are there any like specific foods that have been maybe like shown in studies to help support hormone production or that smooth transition or just overall health in the perimenopause and menopause stages? Like, for example, one thing that I saw a little bit about is consuming soy products.
Mm.
Not soy products necessarily, soy like tofu, edamame, to support estrogen production. Do you have thoughts on that? Because this is your expertise. So I'd love to know if you have like specific foods that you typically recommend to your clients to support in those areas.
Yeah, one of the, as you said there, is what we call phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens are basically plant estrogens,
Mm.
and they have a similar chemical structure to estrogen. It's not estrogen. It's not going to
Okay.
replace your estrogen. There isn't any food that can
Yeah.
replace your estrogen or supplement. I mean, there's so much misinformation out there. But from what phytoestrogens do, and this is shown in research, is that they can really help to minimize or make the menopause transition better for women. Things, linseeds, flax seeds are a
Mm,
great source of phytoestrogens, and
okay.
they are very beneficial for menopausal women, or women in general. But
Yeah.
if you're going to eat flax seeds, soak them in water for 24 hours or crush them, because if you just eat them whole, they tend to just go straight through your system. They don't really do anything. So you need to
Yeah.
crush them or soak them. But they can be very, very beneficial, just helping to balance, the body. They're very high in fiber as well, which we spoke about you need for elimination. And then another thing that I'd focus on is fats.
Mm,
We need fat. We need fat for hormone production. We need it for brain health. And it's something, I know that the era that I grew up in, it was, nobody ate fat. It was a swear
yeah.
word. It was like fat. No, 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 absolutely not. Whereas now we realize through research is that we need fat, and it's really
Yeah.
important for our hormonal health, amongst other things. So making sure that you've got some source of healthy fat with every meal that you eat, things like olive oil, nuts and seeds, butter, coconut oil. What we want to get away from is the refined processed oils, but
Mm,
eating like natural oils. That's the best thing. Olive oil is amazing. I mean, that in all studies, it just has so many benefits. Omega 3, the fatty
fish.
fatty fish. is a good source of that. Algae also is a good source, and omega-3 is very good for the cell membranes and also for our cognitive health. So I tend to focus on fat, getting lots of fiber from plant phytoestrogens and vegetables. And then also, when women, it depends, this is obviously individual, but really looking at what carbohydrates they're eating.
Mm,
I'm not saying you need to cut out carbohydrates, but we see a lot of bodily changes as we get older as women, and you don't quite need, as many carbohydrates as you had when you were younger. So
mm,
looking at getting the majority of your carbohydrates from like vegetables rather than, white rice, getting rid of all the white rice, all the white products, white flour, white bread, potatoes. I've got absolutely nothing against potatoes. They're fine, but it's what we do to them, isn't it? We soak them in oil or we cover them in like some sauces and stuff. But an actual potato, on its own, there's nothing wrong with a potato. But they've been a bit demonized, haven't they, with this huge no carbohydrate wave going on. But there's nothing wrong with a potato in moderation. It depends what your goals are, doesn't it? If it's weight loss, then maybe you should look at reducing things like that. But so I think really
yeah.
so in answer to your question, it's balanced eating. There isn't just one superfood, unfortunately, that is going to enable you to go through menopause without any symptoms. But it's
Overall.
getting rid of sugar as much as you can, getting
Yeah.
rid of alcohol, because that is not the friend of a menopausal woman, and eating protein, healthy fats, and carbohydrates predominantly from vegetables is a very good way to eat, like the Mediterranean style diet. That really is what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Would you say that, like, for people who still want to include carbohydrates into their diet to make sure that they get it mostly from complex carbohydrate
Yeah.
sources and then really focus on regulating blood sugar? So let's say if they do want to eat a potato, potatoes, if I'm remembering properly, are pretty high glycemic, correct?
Mm.
Yeah. So they spike your blood sugar quite a bit. So if someone, let's say, does want to eat a potato, make it homemade with some like olive oil, maybe some like salt and pepper, whatever. And then make sure that you have like protein, fat, and carbohydrate before eating that potato to help reduce that blood sugar spike. Would you say that that would be like the way that you would recommend people going through perimenopause and menopause to eat complex carbohydrates to best support blood sugar regulation and their health?
Yeah, eating in balance. So if you're eating a carbohydrate, just as you said, have it with a source of fat, and have fiber in there as well,
Fiber,
and
yeah.
protein. Because if you eat all of these things, it doesn't spike. Your body doesn't digest it as quickly.
Mm, yeah,
Refined carbohydrates are very easy to digest, and that means that your blood sugar will shoot up. Whereas if you've got, a source of fat there, it has a buffering effect of the carbohydrates. So yeah, if you're going to eat potatoes, make sure you've got a good source of fat there. You've got a protein source, and maybe some vegetables and fiber on there
yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And a big thing that I recommend too to my clients is eating it like before the carbohydrate if they really want to focus on that blood
Mm.
sugar regulation piece. Because, like, refined carbohydrates, especially, your body literally starts to break it down and absorb it, like, starting in your mouth. Like, it's not like it like gets to your stomach, waits a little bit to start being absorbed. Like, it's pretty immediate, which is why I typically recommend my clients to have fiber and protein and fats before they get too many carbohydrates, because if you get a ton of carbohydrates, by the time you even eat that protein and stuff, your body could already be spiking its blood sugar and
Yeah.
absorbing all of that glucose. So I think that's something that a lot of people miss. They're like, "Well, I'm having protein too throughout my day," but then they have like just like carbohydrate rich snacks and it's like,
Mm.
"Okay, well that's great that you're having protein, but you're still spiking your blood sugar because it needs to be in combination and eaten in the right order based on what I have seen." Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Kind of like shifting ways. I think that gives people a lot of ideas on how to improve the nutrition going through these phases. I want to dig a little bit more into like stress and how stress and nervous system dysregulation can impact the severity of menopause symptoms. And we already touched on that. So, more so, diving into what advanced techniques you recommend people implementing to help support them in this area. Because, as we mentioned before, uh, when your ovarian function shuts down, when you hit menopause, it's not creating estrogen or progesterone anymore, and that's going to be created through your adrenals. So it's really important to optimize that. So I want to dive into practices that you've noticed to be most beneficial for people to help optimize their adrenal health through stress management.
Yeah, stress management, that's a big thing, isn't it? And it's finding what works for you. I'd work
Yeah.
with clients very individually. One thing that is super simple is deep breathing.
Mm,
It's actually very, it sounds very basic, but it's actually very difficult to be stressed when you're deep breathing. It
yeah.
resets the nervous system. It tells your body that everything's okay. So even if you feel yourself getting stressed or anxious, just do 3 or 4 deep breaths. It's an amazing, effective tool that you can use that really helps to calm you down. And
Mm,
then, be honest with yourself. What causes you stress in the day? And finding little things that work for you, because it doesn't have to be complicated, like, going to a yoga class, which obviously is brilliant if you've got the time, or
yeah.
doing meditation if that's for you. Again, fantastic. But even just like 5 minute things that you can do in the day, like maybe standing up from your desk, walking round, going outside, sitting by the window and drinking some coffee or whatever. But just put prioritizing yourself and giving yourself these little short breaks in the day that help to reset your nervous system, because that in turn has an effect on your hormone production and how you feel.
Yeah. Another big thing that I recommend to people too is just like slowing down. A lot of
Mm.
people, when they're in like their 40s, maybe like late 30s, that's a really busy time in their life, especially when they have kids. Maybe they have like a career, trying to keep up with a social life. They have a lot going on. And so they tend to be like going quick all the time. And that pretty much can just exacerbate keeping your body in fight or flight, right? And so a big thing that I recommend people to do is literally just slow down. Even if it's just like the dogs are barking, sorry. Even if it's just like, for example, I have this water pot. And it's like that like gooseneck one, so it's like super thin. And when I moved into the to a new place, living with someone, he was like, "Your pot is all like girly and dainty because it like takes a long time to like pour." He's like, "I like my manly one that just like pours really quick." And I was like, "Hey, maybe that'll help you regulate your nervous system because you have to slow down.
Mm.
It's not a race to pour your coffee, right? It can be really beneficial. That's just like a weird example that I use,
Yeah.
but it can be really beneficial to just be like, "Oh, wait, this actually isn't a race to like see how quickly I can pour my coffee. I can take a few extra seconds to pour it a little bit slower." And just tiny little things like that throughout your day can help you in regulating your nervous system, because I know it's so easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day things, trying to do things as quick as
Mm.
possible. You don't even like stop to realize what you're doing or just be in the present moment, you know?
Yeah, totally. We're all really we're just like supercharged, aren't we?
Yeah.
We have so much stimulants in our day from all our devices, from what we're doing, and it is just really, I think, being mindful of that and realizing that your body needs time just to relax and switch off. We
Mm.
shouldn't be stimulated all the time. I mean, that isn't how our brain, need is it likes to work. We need, as you say, we need to just breathe and slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be super complicated like habits either, right? I like that when you said earlier you were like just take like 3 to 5 deep breaths. You don't have to do like a 30-minute deep breathing session to get something good out of it. Just like 3 to 5 deep breaths when you're able, when you feel a little bit stressed, can help just recenter yourself, reset your nervous system, and really support your body. Because a lot of people don't have time to do 30-minute deep breathing sessions or go to
No.
an hour hot yoga, whatever. A lot of people, just don't have time for that. And so
Mm.
giving or helping people understand that that's not necessary to support your body is really helpful for them to kind of have like a confidence, or not confidence, what is the word? Kind of help them understand that, like, oh, there are things that I can implement to support my health and it doesn't have to be complicated, right?
No.
Because it can
Absolutely.
feel really complicated. I know
Mm.
since you're like in the space of like perimenopause and menopause, a lot of people going through that, not having a understanding of how the body works, it feels really confusing
Yeah.
to them because they hear
Yeah.
so much advice on the internet. You should do this. Oh, wait, don't do that. Do this.
Mm.
Everything seems to be so contradictory where people get so confused on what actually works for them that they end up in just this like quick fix. I'm just gonna like try all of these different things out without really understanding, excuse me, what they need to do to actually heal, which is usually, as we've been talking about, literally the super simple stuff. Just eat
Yeah.
whole foods, make sure that you balance your or eat balanced meals, regulate your blood sugar, focus on stress management. Usually these like super complex uh I guess pieces of advice or diets or whatever are typically not what's necessary to help people heal. And in your opinion, would you say it's typically like the foundational, super simple things that really help people see that improvement?
Yeah. It's what you do daily. It's small steps, small things that you do daily that mount up to your overall well-being. It's that daily routine, the things that you do to look after yourself on a daily basis, even if it is, like we say, just 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. If you do that daily, that's what mounts up rather than all of a sudden, once a month doing this huge thing, but then the
Yeah.
rest of the time not doing anything. Your daily habits add up to your overall wellness. Absolutely.
Yeah. And making those daily habits something that you can implement pretty simply, even with
Yeah.
crazy lifestyle, is something that's really important too. So amazing. Real quick, I want to chat about because I know that like mood swings, brain fog, and anxiety, as you mentioned, is a really common things that people experience through perimenopause, even if they have never experienced those before, especially like the anxiety piece. So do you have any advanced like tips that you would suggest for supporting mental clarity and like emotional regulation?
Yeah, I mean, it goes really back to some of the things we've already said is
Yeah.
sugar.
Sugar?
Sugar.
Okay.
You know,
Mm.
reduce sugar as much as you can from your diet because that feeds into anxiety.
Mm.
It feeds into blood sugar
That's right.
imbalances which affect your cognitive health. And really, I think knowledge, isn't it? It's understanding and trying to be nicer to yourself when you realize that I'm going through this transition. I maybe will be feeling a bit more like this, but that's okay because it is a natural transition rather
Yeah.
than fighting it all the time. I think if you give yourself just a little bit of space and think, maybe I will be slightly more irritated or I won't remember where I put that. But the thing with when you can't remember things or you think, oh, I need to remember that, it causes stress because you're like, what was it? What was it? And you go into kind of this cycle of
Mm.
stress and anxiety because you can't remember, which
Mm.
then just makes everything worse. So that what they say is, we talk to psychologists, is if you can't remember something, just think, okay, I can't remember that, and then go and do something else or forget about it. And then it very soon actually comes to you. Whereas if you really stress yourself out trying to remember that thing, it won't because it just makes it even worse. But really, everything that we've spoken about for overall health during menopause is cognitive health as well. Really looking at endocrine disruptors, looking at stress is a huge piece for cognition and anxiety, and then sugar, processed foods, getting rid of all of that and eating real food is so
Yeah.
good for our health and mental health, and also having time off devices, so taking screens and mobile phones and turning them off, or having at least a couple of hours a day where you're not sat in front of a telephone or on social media or looking at screens. That's very important for cognitive health.
Yeah, for every age.
Yeah, yeah,
For sure. And a
yeah.
lot of people have
Mm,
been like tied to their screens, always on the screens. It's really important to
mm,
honestly try to get away from it as much as you can. I set a lot of like time limits on like certain apps, and I have like downtime, I think at like 9 p.m., where I literally can't get on any app on my phone, which sometimes
that's
is annoying if
great.
I have
That's
a
really
later night.
good.
But that just helps me like get off, because obviously like we work online, we're on our screens whenever we need to
Mm,
work, so we really need to make sure that we maintain a balance between like life and work.
yeah,
We can't have like life be on the screens, or then you just always on the screen. So I definitely
yeah.
try to have some flexibility there. I think that's a really important tip to give
Mm.
people as well, moving through those phases as well. Okay, I think we've dove into a lot and given people a lot of practical applications to help support them through this transition of perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause. So, um, if you could just share, let's say, like one piece of advice to help women feel empowered through this transition, what would you say it would be?
I would say that, don't, like I was saying to you before, don't fight it. Realize that this actually is a totally natural transition that every
Mhm.
woman in the world will go through.
Yeah.
Embrace it and just realize that this is a new phase that you're going to be getting through once you've gone through menopause. If you fight it and try to, you're not 20 anymore. I think you have to accept that, we age. Everybody ages, don't they? So accept that this is the transition that you'll go through. But then when you come out of that transition, it's a new phase in your life. So try to embrace it with positivity rather than the negativity, because I think that will make you. It just makes it easier.
Yeah. Complete.
Don't regret getting old. I think that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Don't. It's a privilege denied to many, isn't it? It's don't regret aging.
Yeah. A big thing, even with people who I work with, I typically work with younger individuals most of the time. And a big thing that I try to help them with is accepting their current situation, whether that be like
Mm,
maybe they're a little bit heavier than they want to be, maybe they have gut issues, hormonal dysregulation, maybe they have like an autoimmune condition going on. And a really big thing that I try to support my clients through is just having complete acceptance of where they're at,
yeah.
because if they just keep fighting it over and over, then that will not be able to lead into healing. And if you want to feel better, if you want to experience health, if you want to experience this vitality, right, you need to accept where you're at now, because then that'll also help you in getting your body out of fight or flight too, improve your mindset, improve trust in your body and your body's innate ability to heal, and therefore be able to feel better, improve your
Mm,
symptoms, etc. So I really
yeah.
love that you said that, because that's
Oh,
definitely an
good.
important piece to focus on. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Allison, for coming on this podcast today. Um, I will put your links down below in the podcast notes for people to get in contact with get your resources. Um, and is there anything else you want to leave people with?
No, that's very. It's been lovely talking to you. Really interesting conversation. I've actually got. I don't know if I sent it to you, but I've got a wonderful free ebook which is called Menopause 7-Day Reset, and it's a meal plan with it just
Oh,
giving
amazing.
talking about what we've been talking about, what how to eat and everything. So I can send you the link if you could put that if any of your listeners want to
Absolutely.
download it.
Yeah. So send me that link and I'll put that in
Okay,
the show notes for everyone to get.
brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Amazing. Thank you, Allison.